Welcome. I am Dr. Patrice Berry, licensed clinical psychologist, and here I share legal and entertainment news from a psychological perspective. Today, I've been following the James Crumbly case. That is Ethan's father, and this is related to the incident that happened at Oxford High School. And I am going to play a bit of his statement. Right before he was sentenced, he made he made a statement. And when we're thinking about who's most at fault or who should be held accountable, I don't know that it is a I think that can be really difficult, and so I wanted to give us a safe space to have this conversation. We don't have to all agree, but if you do just have a different opinion, just put, like, "In my opinion." So I am a licensed psychologist, but I am not giving, like, an evaluation of this situation. I'm not a legal expert, so but I am just talking about this from what I know based on having been the director of a school-based mental health program. So I used to direct a so we were in 14 middle and high schools, and we were an outside agency coming in to provide services to students that were high risk and then also had Medicaid. And because if somebody was high risk but they didn't have Medicaid, they had to get help and support through some other funds, through some other. So sometimes the school social worker would meet with that student. They weren't eligible for this particular program. It's how it is in the state of Virginia. Sadly, people often get the services they can afford and not necessarily the services that are the best fit or that they might need. And I can definitely there's a part of me that feels for the family because there is a difficult part of this where I don't know if anyone could have truly seen what was going to come. I don't know if anyone truly understood. In my opinion, the parents, particularly the mom, because she's the one that's talked the most about this. I don't know where the father, James, is. The mom seemed to shut down emotions because she even describes him as just being sad when there was clearly more than just someone being sad. Now, it didn't rise to the level of him not being found like he still was responsible for his actions. The judge did express concern that he might do something like this again, that he seemed to enjoy something like the judge made some very strong statements. I will go back because I did a video covering his Miller hearing, and if anybody wants to go back and see my coverage on that, I'll make sure to put that in the description later. So I do think that the school handled this in a way that other school systems might have done things a little different. And they're going to bring up, and I think it comes up more in this trial, in James Crumbly's trial, that there's a culture of families having weapons in the home, that's not like a red flag, and students possibly having drawings like this, that wasn't automatically a red flag. I do think the level of isolation and some of these other things, like he had no social connections, and he seemed to just be getting into a darker and darker place. And I think that drawing, that helped me drawing, that was a bit of a cry for help, and he never verbalized anything more than that. I do wish a formal risk assessment had been done, and even if a formal risk assessment had been done, could he still have found a way to do what he did? I don't. I want, in situations like this, I want the school to do everything they can. I wanna make sure the families are taking mental health seriously, because it's not funny if a child is talking about, possibly having really intense negative thoughts either towards themselves or others. That is something to be taken seriously. I've had clients tell me that they're, especially teenage clients, tell me that their family calls them dramatic, or that their family thinks that they're faking it, or that their family And for some people, they can do a bit of a cry for help and their emotions can get really big. And to me, I want to make sure that I am giving them the support and care that they need at the level that they're at and that we are maintaining safety. And so let's watch a little bit of his statement because he gives a brief statement before his sentencing. So let's go ahead and play that. I'm going to make myself a little smaller and I'm also going to come back and check out the chat in just a moment. All right, let's play this.
Mr. Crumbly, is there anything you would like to state before I pass sentence?
You're going to make you stand?
Yes, you may. Thank you. You may proceed.
I'd like to thank you for letting me speak, Your Honor. We are all here because of me today, of what I did. My actions were because of what I chose to do. I could not stop myself, but I am the one who led to why we are here today. I do not diminish any ability to anyone who could have stopped me, of anyone of a school or parents. They did not know, and I did not tell them what I planned to do, so they are not at fault of what I've done.
For the first time, let's listen.
All right. And so I am going to come back to mine. Oh, so let me know, could you not hear it at all? Could you not hear it at all? Or was it just really low? So I tried to boost the audio on that one as much as I could. The audio was really low on that. The gist of what he said, okay, yeah, the audio was very low. It was very quiet. And so I won't go back to that particular feed. What he said is that no one could have really he didn't tell anyone what he was doing. I also wasn't sure if some of his statement was to protect his parents as well, because at this point he knew that his parents were going to be were going to so let me try to see if I can play it again with the audio up. So let me see if this will boost it at all. I'll try to share it one more time if the audio was kind of bad. I'm gonna do my best. So I have it boosted as much as I can on my end, and I won't pause it at all. Um, all right. So let me go on ahead and share this one more time. Yeah, and I turned on closed caption as well. So hopefully that helps. Let me see.
Listen in.
Things that no one should ever do. I have lied.
I'm gonna go back since that first part of it wasn't really heard. I'm gonna go back to the first part.
Thank you. You may proceed.
I'd like to thank you for letting me speak, Your Honor. We are all here because of me today, of what I did. My actions were because of what I chose to do. I could not stop myself, but I am the one who led to why we are here today. I do not diminish any ability to anyone who could have stopped me, of anyone of a school or parents. They did not know, and I did not tell them what I planned to do, so they are not at fault of what I've done.
For the
I have lied, been not trustworthy. I've hurt many people, and that's what I've done, and I'm not denying it, but that's not who I plan on to be. Whatever sentence it is, I do plan to be better than I am. I don't know if you believe that, but records of 15, 20, 25 years can show that I will change. Because it may not show it now with only 2 years of records, but I am trying. And all I want is for the people I hurt to just have a final sense of culpability that justice has somewhat been served in any capacity that they can recognize it with. any sentence that they ask for, I ask that you do impose it on me, because I want them to be happy and I want them to feel secure and safe. And I do not want them to worry another day, because I really am sorry for what I've done, for what I've taken of them. I cannot give it back, but I can try my best in the future to help other people, and that is what I will do. So, thank you.
Elaine, this always happens. My bad. Thank you. Thank you, Allison, for being on it and for letting me know that I was muted. So what I was saying is I I don't know if part of what he was doing in that statement was to try to take 100% responsibility so that that would take responsibility off of his parents as well. And I just oh wow. And Kelly mentioned from some of his journal stuff in his dad's trial today, he talks about the incident and then going to prison. It's like he was looking forward to prison. Weird. And I don't know because his best friend went away for mental health reasons, and if he had let someone know that he was having these types of thoughts, and if that was appropriate, he could have went to a treatment facility. I don't in Michigan, sometimes funding, I think this is in Michigan. I could be wrong. Sometimes funding isn't great, I'll be honest. I met with a therapist that was from that region, and I was talking about the options that we had here in Virginia. We have a lot of things to try to put in place to avoid psychiatric hospitalization if we can. So if a student like him, if he had had Medicaid, he would have been eligible in my state for the program that I was talking about. If people were aware that he was having like a serious mental health condition, that he was at risk of hospitalization, being placed out the home, doing a crime, that would have made him eligible for that type of program. I do want to shift to mom's statement because I had some issues with it. I'm going to be honest. Um, I definitely had some issues with it. So let's watch this and we will talk about it.
In some of the messages the prosecution admitted, you say that you failed as a parent. Are you a failure as a parent?
I don't think I'm a failure as a parent, but at that time, I guess I felt bad that Ethan was sad at those things. And I guess I don't know. I just felt like I failed somewhere. I don't really know how to describe it. At that point in time, I just kind of felt like somewhere I failed.
Do you believe there was anything, do you believe that you knew or had reason to know your son was a danger to anyone else?
No. As a parent, you spend your whole life trying to protect your child from other dangers. You never would think you have to protect your child from harming somebody else. That's what blew my mind. That was the hardest thing I had to stomach, is that my child harmed and killed other people.
Do you believe there were things you were thinking at the time, I should do this, but I'm not doing it? Do you look back and think that?
No, I don't. I mean, of course I look back after this all happened, and I've asked myself if I would have done anything differently, and I wouldn't have.
If you could change what?
And what she ends up saying is that she wished that he had harmed her and her husband instead, or like that like I think she says both of them, or at least her. She makes that statement. And her statement that she wouldn't have done anything different, even knowing what we know now, because in a lot of her testimony, it did not seem, even to this day, that she thought that there was anything mental health going on with him. And yeah, like, to me, I would have wanted to at least try to get him help. And somebody mentioned in the comments that he was not thinking of unaliving himself. He was only having those thoughts towards other people. And I, in situations, because sometimes, like, because it all started, so I am in my 40s, and I remember being in high school when the Columbine, when Columbine happened. And our school, like, because schools that there hadn't been something happen on that level, and then get that much press and attention. And since then, unfortunately, there has been incident after incident after incident. For anybody that's been following my channel for a while, you all know that I am a graduate of Virginia Tech, and we had an incident that happened. I want to say, because I graduated in 2004, it was in 2007 was when ours happened. And you never want anyone to ever experience anything like that. And after the one with Virginia Tech, a lot of the teachers, a lot of the people that had interaction with that student, they ended up saying, like, the administration should have taken this more seriously. The counseling center should have, because the individual, I think, was receiving some counseling at the time, and they had attempted to hospitalize him, but it was against his will, and I think he didn't end up getting hospitalized. And because of this, it changed a lot of our law. Like, it changed some things in our state. But I just, seeing her say that she wouldn't do anything different, I wonder if that made the jury think that she wasn't taking any responsibility at all. And the prosecution made her look like a negligent parent, and then her defense is that she was so involved, and she was a, I think they called her, like, she hovered. She was a, like, she was a hovering parent, which is, that's not good. But the fact that the family did not let them know about the severe incident, like, they had had a major argument the night before. The parents didn't, or at least she denied, that they had kicked him, that they had made him sleep outside. It sounds like that might have happened to me. I don't know if I believed helicopter mom. Thank you, thank you. The chat is always the best. Yes. Um, the chat, yes, that situation, that she was a helicopter mom. And being a helicopter mom, that is, so I that's not good either. So that's not even a great description. Like, hovering constantly over my child, because then what happens when I hover over somebody all the time is that when I'm not there, they haven't learned how to, like, manage their behavior, or why to do the things that they're supposed, like, if I have to be there in order for them to be okay, then that's kind of a problem. And so, that she was hyper vigilant. And hyper vigilant, that's, so I want to be vigilant. I don't want to be hyper vigilant. And she did talk about having some of her own, like, anxiety talking in front of people, and that, it was stressful for her to get up and testify. She wanted to tell her part. It did not seem to help her case at all, as she was found guilty. I also agree with this comment, that she seemed to be victimizing herself a little. And, like, that was her statement was just very, very, very odd to me. And I'm a mom of a son, and my child can isolate a little, and not in a way that's a red flag. He's an only child, and he's okay playing by himself. Like, he's like, and I'm an extrovert. My child is more of an introvert. But when their grades start falling, when somebody that wasn't really struggling before, all of a sudden they seem more grumpy, they're more isolated, it might not. So I believe if this was my child and their grades start dropping, they start to isolate themselves, they start to say and do weird stuff at school, because I think mom was the one that joked about him not looking at certain things. I think he was caught searching for bullets at school, and mom was like, "Just don't do it at school," and didn't really even see like, "Hey, buddy, what's going on?" Like, and I don't know that he would have told them even if they had tried, but they seem to, like, joke and minimize it, which was a problem. If you watch the interrogation video, dad is screaming, "I love you," like, dad is and mom is like, "How could you do this?" And I think it made I wonder if she thought it made her look bad? Like to me, in that moment, I don't know that she was fully concerned about her child, like and who knows how you would react in a situation like this. I don't say that in any way to be I'm just giving you all my thoughts about how I see things in these types of situations. Um, Dad seemed to just want him to know that he loved and cared about him. Even the counselor is going to talk about the fact that when the parents came in to meet with him the day of the incident, that dad was the one sitting beside him and that mom was sitting in like a completely other chair. And as a family therapist, I always make note of where people sit. So in my office, I have one big couch that can fit, 3 people, and then I have two individual chairs, and then I have some additional seating in my office as well, because just in case I have a very large family or if I have a bunch of people in my office, because I tell them they can sit anywhere in my office. I'm just not going to sit beside them on the couch. Like I'm going to sit in my own individual seat, but that they can pick wherever they would like to sit. Um, this is the one I wanted. So you thought that they seemed worried um, in their messages, but they're denying it. Uh, and it came off to me that way too. But she seemed disconnected from her family to me. Like she seemed like when she talks about her husband, it doesn't come off in, like, a loving, caring like, she came off emotionally distant to me, and, I don't know why, like, I don't know how she would present outside of a stressful situation like this, because even in the interrogation, because I think she starts going on her phone, and, I think she was messaging people, and the police bring that up. Now dad seems to have a different response, and so I want to, get to his trial. His lawyer I mentioned this on another stream, his lawyer is doing a much better job, I think, with, uh, just I don't know, it's like his lawyer's doing a better job to me. The approach his lawyer is taking is that no one could have foreseen this, that he was doing the best he could. Even the professionals weren't concerned. And what the state is going to say is that the school did not have the information that the parents had. And that if the parents had relayed to them all that was going on, the school would have taken it more seriously and hopefully things could have been averted, or that the family, because I think the prosecution says this, that when dad left that meeting at the school, he could have went by the house just to make sure, like he asked for that 9 millimeter, like should I like that dad didn't even go to check to see if it was there. I'm gonna see where this is. Okay. All right. So this is the school counselor. I played a little bit of his testimony during my coverage of Jennifer Crumbly. And I want to explain the difference between a school guidance counselor, a licensed mental health professional, and a school social worker. And this is based on how things are in Virginia. Every state, every other place is different. So in my state, a school guidance counselor they receive the ability to meet with students through the Board of Education. They do not have a counseling license. So they aren't really skilled in individual therapy, or like they're not working under a health board license or a counseling board, psychology board, social work board. They are providing supportive services through the Board of Education. And we have school social workers that some of them are licensed, some of them are not. But if one of them that is not licensed, if they do a risk assessment, they have to check in with their supervisor, because all of them have, like, if they're not licensed, they definitely, I think, have to confirm, they have to talk about their decision making with their supervisor, because they're operating under their supervisor's license. And but in my state, many of them are licensed to practice social work, and they would do what's called a risk assessment. So if a teacher has identified a student that they're concerned about, they would have a meeting that was strictly dedicated to getting an idea of how's the student doing, what's the level of risk, and really meeting with them to ask them questions. It's going to come up from the school counselor that multiple teachers had let him know that they were concerned. And at one point, he briefly talks with him in the hallway to say, like, hey, if you want to meet, know that I'm available. But in my opinion, if it's rising to this level, I would have called the student down with a licensed provider. And the reason why I'm saying licensed is because to get when an individual gets a master's in counseling, they I don't know what level of assessment. So like I don't know. So we're all trained in doing risk assessments, but when you're doing it under your own license, you do additional training. And he might be a licensed counselor. It did not sound like it. It sounded like he has a caseload of 400 students, and that he mostly did and he did do risk, like he did meet with students that were thinking about harming themselves, and he would refer them to meet with a licensed provider and provide the family with resources and tools. I wish there was somebody where it was their job to only make sure to handle to do the severe cases, and that they were very skilled in being able to assess for risks to harm self, others, those types of things. Also, from a discipline side, I'm also going to play a little bit of the dean's testimony as well. And Ethan Crumbly, he didn't have a discipline record. But in my state, so like if a student makes like I'm just gonna say the word a hit list, they can get expelled for like at least they can get expelled for a long period of time for doing something like that. If somebody does something that where people are like, ugh, like this was zero tolerance. Like there are people that have been kicked out of school for engaging in certain behaviors. I don't know that what he did would have rose to that level, because like if he had had a particular student's name on it, they might have made it a disciplinary action. And I'll play what the dean says about that a little bit later. Um, all right. Uh, a lot of this, because the way that they talk about um, thoughts of unaliving oneself, because they only assessed for that risk and nobody ever assessed for risk of harm to others. So when I do a risk assessment, I always assess for risk both to self and others. Like I always assess for both. That's part of a formal risk assessment. All right, so let's play a little bit of this.
HOPKINS. Go ahead.
Okay, so he spells his name. He talks about his history. I'm just going to skip ahead a little bit.
Becomes repeated, or when something becomes more concerning, I am going to then involve a parent.
Okay. Are grades available to parents on a district-wide basis?
Yes, they are. They are available through a system called Power School, which is available online
Okay, and that's the system that a parent can log in daily if they would choose to.
as often as they would like.
Now, the next interaction you had with the defendant's son would be September 2021.
I did not actually have an interaction with the defendant's son.
I'm going to pause this because same. So in my state, the school psychologist is not the one. So in my state, the school psychologist, it receives their license. Is it by the psychology board? I'm not sure, but they're not. So I'm a clinical psychologist. I can diagnose. In my state, school psychologists, they are not able to provide a diagnosis. Somebody has to go to a licensed psychologist in order to give a diagnosis. And in my state, the only option there is as a clinical psychologist. That's I think forensic might be another one that's available through the Board of Psychology, but most forensic psychologists are also licensed as clinical psychologists as well. Yes. Hello, Kayla. Clinical social worker who has done school based work. It sounds like he's a school counselor. Exactly. Who does scheduling and some basic mental health interventions like stress management. And to me, an individual with those qualifications, to me, so this is my personal thing, they should not be doing a risk assessment. And I am a little concerned that there wasn't a formal risk assessment done, that it was just kind of a, "Hey, buddy, tell us about this. Like, this isn't appropriate to do in school," but not a, are you okay?" And so they're under so school psychologists are under the Board of Education. That's, and every state gets to do that different. But in most states, that is how it's done, to my understanding. Um yes. And so if I am assessing, one of the questions I ask is, are there what weapons are in the home? And then we talk about securing them. And the family might have said it's in a lockbox and left out the part that the lockbox, that the code is 000, that they never changed the code to the lockbox. Because I do think the parents, I could be wrong, correct me in the chat if I'm wrong. I believe they did have a lockbox. Um, yes, yes. Um, and okay, so your school does not have a psychologist. So, and school psychologist, because sometimes what schools do is it's the school social worker if there is a child that is at risk. So, this individual, he's going to talk about how he's met with 4 students, I think that year, that had attempts, that had attempted to unalive themselves, and uh and so in my state, if that came up to the guidance counselor, the school social worker would be the one that came in to assess that student's risk, because they're the ones that have more experience and training in in that particular field. And because also, like, he has 400 students, and his main job is people's schedules and just like that general welfare. Normally the school social worker, their caseload is sometimes less, or at least that day, if there is a student in crisis, that is going to raise to like the highest priority. And there have been times where they determined a student was not safe, and they reached out to the parents, and then they recommended that they either meet with a licensed professional that day, or that they go to the emergency room for an immediate assessment. And in this case, they gave the family 24 to 48 hours. He is going to say that if the family hadn't followed up within 24 hours, that he would have called Child Protective Services, because it is medical neglect to not get a child mental health services when they need it. Um, so Allison, it is my understanding that he is a guidance counselor. So I think the school calls him like a, but it's my understanding that he is a guidance counselor. Like that is my understanding of everything. The tube does not like the other word. So there are certain words that if I say them, my videos get impacted. And so I have to talk around certain words. I am free to say that word, but if I say it, then it can mess up some things. Yes, thank you, Jen. Yes, YouTube bans because that can be a very triggering. So they don't want people talking about like because there was content online that was like telling people like that was so there was some controversial, some problematic content that was not safe. So even as a so I'm a certified licensed provider. If you go to my page, it says that YouTube has verified that I am a licensed psychologist. I had to send them my ID and my license, and they periodically take a look at my content to make sure that I can stay in their health professions group. And that is something specific towards health professions that YouTube offers, just so that people can know, like, hey, like I really am like I'm not like I really am a licensed mental health professional. But even with that, there are certain words that I can't say or that I have to talk around. And so let's go ahead and play a little bit of this.
Son, I received information about the defendant's son.
Okay, I'm showing you Exhibit 199. This is an email from a different teacher to you, September 8th, 2021.
Yes.
Okay. And why don't you go ahead and read the email here that you received?
Hi, Sean. Could you please touch base with student? In his autobiography poem, he said that he feels terrible and that his family is a mistake. Unusual responses for sure.
Okay, that is September the 8th, 2021. Do you recall any interaction with the defendant's son at that point?
I do not.
Okay. Now, do you recall any?
And I believe what he's going to say is that he talked to the teacher and got some more context from the teacher, and he decided to not follow up. And some of that, and I believe so. I did watch the lawyer covered this recently, and he talked about that the school could potentially be civilly liable, but sometimes schools are protected from some things. And so, like, I don't know. I do want to get to the cross examination. Let me know if you have questions about his testimony because I feel like the father's attorney did a much better job on cross examination, especially on these topics than Jennifer's lawyer did. And that's just my opinion. Let's see where we are.
You don't know if that voicemail was ever shared with Mr. Crumbly. Is that fair?
Well, we talked about it in our meeting the next day.
Okay. On the 29th, you don't know if Mr. Crumbly was ever made aware.
I would have no way of knowing that.
Right. You wouldn't know.
Just to clarify, the person speaking is Dad's lawyer.
You responded to the situation of Mr. Crumbly's son looking at bullets on November 29th on his phone with the information that you had.
I did.
And from what you knew at the time, other than the behavior being inappropriate for school, you didn't see anything else that might have been concerning.
Well, and I want to make clear, I wouldn't be the one doing discipline in this situation. So,
And I'm asking, and let me clarify, I'm just asking from a counselor's perspective. I'm not asking for discipline. You clarified that Mr. Eject did discipline in this
okay.
fight.
And that was really because to me, some of the statements, some of the concerns was raising a mental health concern to me based on what I've seen and heard.
So could you repeat your question? Please?
Yes. As a counselor, on November 29th of 2021, you didn't see anything overly concerning about what we've just talked about with looking at bullets on the phone. That the focus was more that looking at bullets on his phone was inappropriate for school.
So are you asking from a mental health standpoint, did I see anything concerning?
Not really. I don't know that you're a mental health professional. I mean, you're a school counselor and you do have some training and
Sure.
education in that. I'm not asking for you to go anywhere outside of your education and experience. Just as a high school.
Do we need to rewind that one time? Because she points out the obvious that uh, like he's a guidance counselor, and not that like, so guidance counselors are needed, and guidance counselors sometimes are the first line, but when a concern is identified, that is when a licensed provider, in my opinion, needs to come in. And I'm sure, I hope this school system now has a licensed provider that's available for all of their schools. Uh, Concerns and issues with students is only like going up, like it's not going down. So, child and adolescent, trigger warning for the unaliving stuff. Um, Child and adolescent unaliving rates are going up, and there is big concern about this next generation getting hopeless and helpless and really struggling with pushing through when things get difficult. And so a lot of my work is with helping students build a life that they want to live. And I'm having to do this younger and younger. So I'm doing this with sometimes 7 and 8-year-old children that are having these that they're having the unaliving thoughts. I have assessed individuals for risk of harm to others, especially when there was psychosis and there was like voices telling them to harm other people, and making sure to get them the appropriate care and safety for the family as well, and situations like that. And so yes, he is a school counselor. Okay. So we are gonna keep going.
School counselor sitting in Miss Fine's office with the information that you had, you didn't see red flags. We've talked about, and let me give you some, let me go over it a little bit. You've discussed that you know that there are households in Oxford that have firearms in them, right?
Yes, there are.
You know that people in Oxford hunt.
Some do, yes.
You know that students are interested in guns.
Some can be, yes.
You know that students look at bullets.
We had one student who did that in that situation, yes.
You know that student, Mr. Crumbly's son, was honest about looking at the bullets when he was asked about it.
To the extent of our knowledge, yes, he was.
He told you that he'd gone to the shooting range with his mom.
Yes.
The weekend before. Yes. Those things were not concerning to you.
Taking those things in a vacuum is why we called home. That's why Ms. Fine called home.
And she said, we had this meeting. We told him it's not appropriate. He understands. No need to call back unless you have questions, right?
I don't remember the exact voicemail that was left.
The voicemail was not, we need you to come to school right now.
To my memory, it was not, but again, I don't remember the exact voicemail that was left.
On November 30th of 2021, you received another email. It's this one, Exhibit 202, which was from another teacher.
There's a really good question. Hello, Birdies Crime Chat. Are you talking? So, Ethan, information about Ethan's mental health, because he cannot testify. I believe Jennifer, the wife, she can't testify either. And they can't bring certain things into dad's trial. And so I don't think his final diagnosis, I don't think that was discussed. So 400 students is more just like doing check-in. And it's not, so you only meet with every student when it comes time to scheduling for the next year. So I remember meeting with my guidance counselor, and it was like 5 minutes. Like I filled out a form of the classes I wanted to take. They looked over it. They're like, "Okay, yep, you're interested in going to college. You're on the right path. Okay, your grades are, and that was pretty much it. And it was just like a 5-minute check-in. I did have a negative experience with a guidance counselor, and she was the one that did this type of assessment. And she's literally why I became a therapist, because she was so bad. Now, I'm not saying anything about him. I'm saying my experience I had with my middle school guidance counselor. She was not trained to me how to like talk to children that might be in crisis. I wasn't in a crisis. Thankfully, I was safe. What happened was my mom used to make some statements, And I was safe. I felt safe. I in no way felt, but like looking back, she would go back and she would do things different. She wouldn't say things the way that she said them. And I think a friend had went to the guidance counselor and they were concerned about me. And if I was not safe, the way that she handled that meeting, I would not have told her. Like the meeting, she knew nothing about me. It seemed like she was just checking a box of this concern came up. She brought me in real quick. She was like, and she asked me a question that I was not ready for because so I was living in Germany at the time. My father was living in Turkey, and she started out the gate asking me questions about my father who I hadn't we weren't on we didn't live and I hadn't seen him in a few years. There wasn't an issue in the relationship. It was just that was how things were. And my mom's name is Johnny, and I think she looked at my file, she assumed Johnny was a man, and that's why she started questioning me about my father. And when she's having this conversation with me, she doesn't even know that my mom is in the United so I'm in Germany. My mom is in the United States for like an additional 3 months or something. I'm staying with a family friend and I'm safe. It's like I'm having a sleepover every night. That would happen sometimes. My mom would go TDY and it was something that I was used to. I was raised by a single mother, and if she had to go on an extended business trip, I would stay with a very close family friend. It was actually at the time, it was my best friend and her family. And the guidance counselor, like she did not at all prepare me that she was going to ask me the types of questions that she asked. And like I said, if something wasn't okay, I would not. The way that she went about it, I would have never told her, like never ever in a million years that like if you're going to have this type of conversation, you have to kind of prepare the child. You have to kind of build some rapport. You have to ask some open-ended questions like, so tell me about your family, who do you live with? Any major changes in your life recently? Like you have to take your time. You can't rush through a conversation like that. And you're moving to the Netherlands. So we were in southern Germany, and we used to travel to the Netherlands all the time. And so we're gonna keep going.
Who was talking about Mr. Crumbly's son looking at a video of a guy gunning people down. Correct?
Yeah, so this teacher was a co-teacher in that same first hour class.
From the day before.
Yes.
Okay. You reviewed that email on November 30th of 2021.
So I in no way absolve the parents of their responsibility. If I was on Jennifer Crumbly's jury, based on how everything went, and no, because I'm a psychologist, I would probably know the defense, and like nobody would probably want me on the jury. But if I was, um, the state seemed to prove their case that she was not. I don't know, like, to me, the state kind of proved their case with that one. I don't know how things are going with James's case because it does besides the fact of if he did come to his dad and say, "Hey, I want help," and if dad didn't get him help. And, but if yeah, so I'm stuck with this one, and I'll be interested to see what the jury thinks down the road. Um, oh wow. Sorry to hear about that, Allison. I'm not gonna put because it has a loss in it, so I'm not gonna put that one up there. I have had some good experiences with guidance counselors. I've had good experiences with counselors. I used to work very closely with guidance counselors. They were when I was running that school-based mental health program. They would often be the ones that would sometimes initiate referrals because they were more accessible than the school social workers sometimes because they were normally available. I did also want to note, so I think the family didn't have insurance for him at the time. And mental health care can be really expensive when you are uninsured, but there are services and supports. There are licensed people that provide affordable care. Sometimes it can be hard to find. Telehealth opens a door, but for this case, telehealth probably wouldn't have been recommended because if somebody is high risk, you typically want to meet with them in person. And so we're going to keep going.
One,
I did.
you made the decision to, you didn't, I think you said you didn't see it for about 20 or 30 minutes.
I didn't. I was on the phone and I actually responded to it while I was on the phone. And then upon ending that conversation, was going to go meet with the student.
And this is the fourth email that you've received about Mr. Crumbly's son since the beginning of the 2021 school year.
Yes.
The third email in 2 days.
Is it?
You would have received
I think it's the second in 2 days.
the November 29th email about the bullets, and then do you recall receiving a follow-up email later that day?
It was a confirmation of that.
Okay.
Yes. So this is the second one with additional information.
Okay. The second one on a different issue. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The teacher described the video as a movie scene, but not a real event.
And so they're going to go, like I said, I think dad's attorney is doing a better job pushing home the concern that, that dad's attorney, I think, is going to say these professionals didn't see it coming. How could the dad? But once again, those professionals did not have the information that the family had. And both dad and the dean of schools, I think he was the dean of schools at that time, they're both going to say that if they had known everything, if they had known just how bad things were, they would have handled things differently. And so, all right, let's play a little bit of the dean's testimony, talk about it.
Maybe 3 or 4 minutes prior to my arrival.
Okay.
I'm not sure if they waited for me to start or if they had already begun, but I know that I arrived a few minutes after they did, after I was alerted that they had arrived.
So were you there when Mr. Hopkins explained his concerns about the drawing?
Yes.
Now, he just testified, so I don't need you to go through everything he said, but do you recall if James Crumbly said anything?
During the meeting?
Yes.
He did. He expressed concern for his son, that he knew, or he reminded his son that he could always speak to him about stuff, and that he had a journal that he could write stuff in if he was feeling frustrated or going through something.
Now, as a dean of students, when are you permitted to search students' personal belongings?
So when I have a reasonable suspicion that the student might have something illegal or something that's not allowed at school, and so there needs to be some sort of sign, like a report from somebody. Oftentimes kids will be seen with it, or they'll be showing whatever the things are that they've brought to school they're not supposed to. There needs to be some type of a suspicion or alert that I have that will allow me to do that. And so in this situation, there wasn't something that alerted me that indicated I needed to search.
Okay, and why not?
Nothing that he said, nothing that he, none of the behavior that he exhibited when I returned with his bag indicated that. There wasn't any suspicion that I had at the time that allowed me to believe that I needed to do that.
At any point were you informed about the defendant's son's access to weapons?
I was not. No.
Were you given details by either James or Jennifer Crumbly about the words and drawings on this exhibit?
I was not.
Thank you. Nothing for this.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning.
Good morning.
Prior to becoming the dean of students at Oxford High School, you worked in various schools and school districts. Is that correct?
Yes.
For most of your career, in fact, you worked with at-risk students.
Yes.
Normally, that includes students with some sort of academic or behavioral problems.
Yes, that is correct.
In fact, your role at Oxford High School, you testified today, primarily you dealt with the code of conduct,
Yes,
behavioral and academic intervention,
yes,
and issues with attendance.
yes.
You had not had contact with Mr. Crumbly's son until November 30th of 2021.
That's correct.
So as far as you know, once you became employed by Oxford High School,
I saw a really good question. So I believe Dad has a yes. So because somebody asked a question, Allison, about the things on Dad's ears, and so everyone is able to be accommodated for whatever they need, and so I think it boosts the audio in the court so that Dad can hear it. I believe it's something that helps boost the audio because Dad has a hearing issue. Now, I don't know what his hearing level was at the time of those meetings, and I don't know if the defense is going to bring that up. It seemed like Dad was aware during those meetings and like he was definitely understanding everything. So I don't know that he could blame anything on that, but it's to help Dad hear. All right, let's keep going.
there were no behavioral issues with Mr. Crumbly's son,
There was not.
no academic issues, no attendance issues.
No.
You learned on November 29th of 2021 that Mr. Crumbly's son was looking at bullets on his phone in class.
Yes, that is correct.
But once you had been made aware of it, or once you learned of it, you learned that that had already been handled by Mr. Hopkins and Ms. Fine. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So you didn't do anything else with anything that day?
No,
Okay.
I didn't need to do anything further based on the fact that Ms. Fine and Mr. Hopkins did everything that I would have done in that situation.
Okay. So you didn't see any need for additional discipline or any additional intervention or anything like that, correct?
That's correct.
On November 30th of 2021, you were advised by one of Mr. Crumbly's son's teachers that he was writing inappropriate statements on his home on a math assignment.
Yes,
You were quickly shown a picture of the assignment on a cell phone, if you recall.
yes. That's
You
correct.
didn't look at it very well, correct?
No.
You saw that there were drawings,
Yes,
but you didn't see necessarily what all the drawings were. Is that fair?
that's fair. Yes,
You did see the words blood everywhere,
yes,
but you didn't see much beyond that.
that's correct.
To you, the words on the page were more concerning than the drawings themselves, right?
I would agree with that. Yes,
And that's because sometimes kids in high school draw violent things.
absolutely. Yes,
That's not abnormal.
it's not abnormal.
You felt that what was on the paper was not appropriate for school. Is that correct?
Yep, I would agree with that.
But that it wasn't in and of itself concerning,
Yes,
and that you didn't see it as a threat to anybody.
that is correct.
You didn't see a correlation of violence with the drawings on the paper.
I did not know.
Again, Mr. Crumbly's son had no prior disciplinary history,
He did not know.
no prior bad behavior.
He did not.
He was a pretty average student.
He was. Yes,
He'd only missed one class that year.
I can't speak to that.
You said you dealt with attendance, so that's why I was asking.
Sure.
So you're not aware of his attendance
I'm not
history?
aware of specifically his attendance.
Okay. He had none of the typical early indicators that there would be an issue of concern other than these isolated incidents from November 29th and November 30th that you were aware of.
Judge, I'm just going to object to the form of the question. Typical indicators. This witness can testify regarding code of conduct and discipline. That's it.
Yeah, but unless he was able to testify about what a typical indicator would be by his experience.
And I can ask him that, Your Honor. Based on your experience dealing and your education and training with at-risk students and for your position as the Dean of Students, there are what you would consider early indicators of potentially concerning or threatening behavior. Is that fair?
I would say that's a fair statement.
Some of those include prior disciplinary history,
Yes,
prior bad behavior by the student,
yes,
issues with grades,
yes,
issues with attendance.
yes.
Okay. So knowing all of that, none of those, what I'm calling early indicators, were present other than the two incidents that you were aware of on November 29th and November 30th of 2021.
As far as I was aware, yes.
You sat in on the conversation between Mr. Hopkins and Mr. Crumbly's son on November 30th of 2021.
Yes, I did.
And that was before his Mr. Crumbly and his wife got to the school.
That's correct.
Based on the information that you had at that time, you did not believe that Mr. Crumbly's son posed a threat to anyone.
That's a fair statement, yes.
You were even less concerned after you confirmed some of the information that you'd learned from Mr. Crumbly's son with Mr. Crumbly's wife.
Yes, after she had confirmed all the information he shared with us. My concern from a discipline standpoint was pretty much lowered all the way to none at that point.
Okay. And you said all of the information that he had shared with you. And we've heard some about that, but I just want to confirm. That was about the losses that he'd experienced in 2021, correct? The loss of a family member?
Yes.
The loss of his family dog?
Yes.
A friend had moved away?
Yes.
He'd struggled with COVID?
He did, yes.
He had a hard time with virtual school?
Yes.
Those were the things that you confirmed with his family, with his parents?
Along with his desire for graphic design and video games, and that they thought he should focus more on academics rather than that, which is what he had shared with us during the meeting.
Okay. When you say he had...
Once again, she is doing a really great job on cross-examination, I think. I'll be interested to see what type, if they do call any witnesses. I wonder if they'll call witnesses to maybe talk about the relationship that James had with Ethan. I don't know if they did things together. Like, I don't know what their relationship was like. It sounded like they portrayed Mom's and Ethan's relationship to be pretty distant. It'll be interesting to see what they play or kind of how Dad is portrayed in all of this. I do think that the family likely didn't want their child to get into trouble. I don't think the family thought that he was gonna be a risk to anyone else, and I don't think they were taking it seriously, and that's my opinion. I don't think they thought their child would ever do that. And in my mind, because of the training I have, because of what I've done, there were some red flags. Some of the increased isolation, stop doing things that he used to enjoy. Like, these are literally like the signs of a severe clinical depression. And sometimes with and sometimes people, they can be a bit sadistic, and they might just like, so sometimes not everything necessarily falls into that. I do believe, Ethan, because he's on medication while incarcerated, because I think during his Miller hearing, they went over the medication that he's on and all of that. The title of this was "Who's at Fault?" And I do think that the Ethan holds responsibility for his actions. I do think the family ignored some red flags, and the prosecution's gonna say that they were too involved in what was going on in their own lives, or that they just weren't aware. And I think Dad's defense is gonna say, "How could he have possibly known?" I do think the school could have done things differently too, and I do hope that they have licensed mental health professionals that do their risk assessments, if they're needed, or if a student does rise to a certain level, that they have to be assessed that day. So, ER, but if you go to the ER, that assessment is just way too long, and so that's why sometimes, but that is an option, so people can be assessed, but there would have to be, I don't like, normally that would have been if somebody was talking about, harming themselves or somebody else. That's when they would do that type of assessment. I agree that nobody ever thinks, and to me, there were some clear red flags, and I do think the family was keeping information from the school and not taking their child's mental health seriously. I don't think they were, because Mom still denies that Ethan has any mental health issues, and, that was based on her testimony, because she just describes him as sad. Like, "Oh, he was just kinda sad," but, like, he would have met criteria, I believe, for, like, a clinical depression, and yes. And I always do my caveat that most individuals with mental health issues, they're more likely to be the victims of crimes than to necessarily do them. And so just because somebody does a crime, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's a mental health issue. I like to talk about the intersection of psychology and the law, because uh I think Ethan's lawyer tried to say, "Oh, he's a juvenile, like he should be given a second chance," and all of I the judge, because I do believe Ethan is sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. And Cammy, I agree. I do think that he was asking for help, and I wish that he had gotten it. I We might have been a little by the time he had access. And so if individuals are going to have if they are going to have weapons, making sure to secure them, making sure that individuals that people don't have access to it. And I like that there are those biometric ones where I make sure that only me, that only, only me and my partner, making sure that only certain people have access to it if people are going to have weapons. I want to put up the Go Hokies. I am a Hokie through and through. And yes, yes, yes. All right. Thank y'all for joining, especially if you checked out that video I did on the twins that swapped places. Like, what? And so, and to anyone that was redirected and that joined this stream from that stream, thank y'all for hanging out with me tonight. Every now and then, I might do the double stream. I won't do this all the time, but sometimes these were the two cases that I wanted to definitely talk about. If y'all have ideas of cases that you would like for me to talk about, if you can put it in the comment section on the video, so the live chat, I hopefully would see it, but but if you can put it in the comment on the video, if there are any cases that you all would like for me to follow. I'm looking at the docket and I don't see docket. So I put court cases when there are major things coming up. I put them on my schedule, and I don't see anything on the schedule for Saturday because I will stream 2 p.m. Eastern on Saturday. And so, not sure what the topic's going to be yet. So, we'll see. I hope y'all enjoy the rest of your evening. Thanks so much for joining me.